In the vibrant city of Mecca, years before the rise of Islam, a young man named Mus'ab ibn Umayr lived a life of unrivaled privilege. Born into the wealthy Banu Abdul Dar clan of Quraysh, Mus'ab was the beloved only son of a powerful mother, Kunas bint Molik, who spared no expense in pampering him. Clad in fine garments and scented with rare perfumes, Mus'ab's arrival was always felt before seen. Handsome and intelligent, Mus'ab moved effortlessly among Meccan nobles and even sat in council with the elders while still a youth. Many admired the most charming of the Makkans, as some would call him, for his sharp mind and elegant bearing. He was thus in a position to know the issues which concerned the Makkans and what their attitudes and strategies were. Little did they know that this favoured son of Mecca would soon trade his silks for sackcloth in the pursuit of a higher calling. In his late teens, Mus'ab's life of comfort took a dramatic turn. A stirring new message was spreading through Mecca. Muhammad ibn Abdullah, the Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, had declared the oneness of God and called for the abandonment of idol worship. The whole city buzzed with debate and consternation. The Quraysh leadership responded to Muhammad's preaching first with ridicule, then with persecution of any who dared follow him. Yet despite the tension, Mus'ab's curiosity was piqued. In those early days of Islam, when the Quraysh raged against the new faith, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, established a secret refuge, Dar al-Arqam, the house of al-Arqam ibn Abi al-Arqam, near Mount Safa. Al-Arqam ibn Abi al-Arqam was one of the earliest to embrace Islam. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, chose this house as the first secret center where he taught the Qur'an, guided his followers, and gathered the small community of believers away from the eyes of the Quraysh. Behind its closed doors, away from hostile eyes, the Prophet, peace be upon him, gathered his small band of followers. Here the Qur'an was recited, prayers were taught, and hearts were shaped with patience and faith. One by one, men and women entered this sanctuary in secret and emerged as believers. Dar al-Arqam was more than walls and a roof. It was the first school, the first mosque, and the first headquarters of Islam. Mus'ab heard that the small band of Muslims would gather discreetly in this house to pray and learn from Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, away from Quraysh harassment. One night, Mus'ab slipped into Dar al-Arqam, eager to hear the Prophet, peace be upon him, for himself. Inside, he found him reciting the Qur'an, words of power and beauty that pierced his heart. The youth, once lost in luxury, now trembled with faith. In that moment, Mus'ab embraced Islam, the decision that would change his life forever. But joy was shadowed by fear. His mother, Kunas bint Malik, was a woman of fierce temper. Knowing her wrath, Mus'ab kept his faith secret, visiting al-Arqam's house quietly to pray and learn. Yet in Mecca, nothing stayed hidden. One day, Uthman ibn Talha saw him praying and spread the news. Soon, it reached his mother. Dragged before family and clan, Mus'ab stood firm. With calm resolve, he declared his belief in Allah and his messenger, reciting verses that had lit his heart, hoping they might move theirs. His mother's face darkened with rage. How could her beloved son abandon the gods of his ancestors? She lifted her hand to strike him, but stopped. Perhaps it was a mother's love, or the serenity in his eyes. Instead, she ordered him chained in a corner of the house, cut off from freedom and comfort. If he wanted Muhammad's religion, she thought, he would have nothing else. Days turned to weeks as Mus'ab remained chained in his mother's house. Outside, the persecution grew harsher. He heard of Bilal and Khabbab tortured for their faith and longed to stand with them. Then came news. A group of Muslims would flee across the Red Sea to Christian Abyssinia. One night, slipping free from his guard, Mus'ab escaped into the darkness. The palace of luxury had become his prison. Now he left it behind forever. Soon he was aboard a ship bound for safety, part of Islam's first migration in 615 CE. In Abyssinia, under the just King Negus, the Muslims tasted freedom for the first time, yet Mus'ab's heart yearned for the Prophet, peace be upon him. When rumors spread that Quraysh had embraced Islam, he returned home with hope, only to find it was a lie. Persecution still raged. Once more he fled back to Abyssinia, forced into exile but unshaken in faith. At last, after years of hardship, Mus'ab returned to Mecca. Gone were the silks and perfumes. In their place stood a man hardened by sacrifice. When his mother tried again to bind him, he warned he would resist with force. Stunned by his resolve, she released him, but in bitterness cast him out. "You are no longer my son." Tears filled Mus'ab's eyes as he pleaded gently, "Mother, say, La ilaha illa Allah, Muhammad Rasulullah." But she refused, swearing by her idols and the shooting stars. And so mother and son parted, she clinging to the past, he carrying forward an unbreakable loyalty to Allah and his messenger. Mus'ab left his family home stripped of the wealth and finery he once took for granted. The elegant youth of yesterday could now be seen wearing only coarse patched garments, sometimes nothing more than a simple cloak or shawl. Yet in loss, he found liberation. Mus'ab devoted himself completely to the Prophet and the teachings of Islam, studying the Qur'an and striving to please his Lord. The transformation was so stark that it moved those who had known him before. One day, a group of Muslims sat with Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in Medina when Mus'ab approached wearing an old threadbare cloak. The companions lowered their gaze, some wiping away tears, remembering Mus'ab's days of youthful splendor. The Prophet, noticing their emotion, smiled gently. "I have seen this Mus'ab in Mecca," he said, "and there was no youth more indulged by his parents than he." Then he left all that behind out of love for Allah and his messenger. The Prophet's eyes glistened with pride and compassion as he spoke. Mus'ab ibn Umayr had given up a life of luxury for the sake of the truth, and in doing so, he gained a stature that silk and gold could never bestow. By the early 620s, Islam had quietly won a few hearts in a faraway city north of Mecca, Yathrib, later known as Medina. After a decade of preaching in Mecca with limited success, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, sought to spread the message beyond his hometown. A small group of Yathrib residents from the tribes of Aus and Khazraj had embraced Islam during the annual pilgrimage season and pledged their support to the Prophet in what became known as the First Pledge of Aqaba. They returned to Yathrib eager to learn more and bring their fellow townsmen to the new faith. The Prophet knew this fledgling community would need a teacher and guide, someone to represent him and prepare Yathrib for the momentous changes to come. For this critical mission, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, chose none other than Mus'ab ibn Umayr, who was about 24 years old. Thus, Mus'ab earned the enduring title as the first ambassador of Islam. He was the first emissary sent beyond Mecca to openly preach Islam. Many companions were older or of higher status, but Mus'ab's character and talents made him ideal. He was knowledgeable in the Qur'an, eloquent in speech, and blessed with a gentle, persuasive manner. Perhaps most importantly, he embodied the very spirit of sacrifice and sincerity that Islam taught. With the Prophet's blessing, Mus'ab set off to Yathrib to spread the light of faith. He arrived to a city divided by tribal feuds, yet hopeful for a new beginning. Mus'ab took up residence with one of Yathrib's early Muslim converts, Asad ibn Zurara of the Khazraj tribe. Together, these two began visiting Yathrib's households, inviting people to worship the one God and follow his messenger. As Mus'ab and Asad moved through Yathrib, their success soon drew attention. Word reached tribal chiefs that this ambassador was turning people from the old gods. One day, as Mus'ab, taught by a well, Usaid ibn Hudayr, a leader of the AWs, stormed forward with spear in hand. "Why have you come here misleading our people? Leave at once." Mus'ab did not flinch. With a gentle smile, he said, "Sit and listen. If you like it, accept it. If not, we will go." Surprised by his calm, Usaid lowered his spear and sat. Mus'ab then recited the Qur'an. His words melted the anger from Usaid's face. Tears replaced fury. "How beautiful these words are. What must I do?" he asked. Mus'ab replied, "Cleanse yourself. Declare that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger, and pray." Usaid obeyed at once, bathing in the well, proclaiming the Shahada, and praying for the first time. Overcome with truth, Usaid said, "There is another man I will bring. If he believes, all his tribe will follow. He is Sa'd ibn Mu'adh." Soon Sa'd arrived, ready to confront Mus'ab. But seeing his friend Usaid already at peace, he too listened to the Qur'an. Within moments, Sa'd's heart surrendered. With both chiefs embracing Islam, their people followed quickly. One by one, clan by clan, men and women entered the faith at Mus'ab's hands. For his teaching, he became known as Al-Muqri, the mentor. In the months that followed, Islam spread swiftly through Yathrib. A city long divided by tribal feuds now began to unite under the worship of one God. Mus'ab ibn Umayr, the Prophet's young envoy, showed remarkable wisdom and patience. He won hearts not with force, but with kindness, reason, and the beauty of the Qur'an. By the time the Prophet, peace be upon him, would later arrive, it was said there was hardly a household Mus'ab had not visited, with at least one member embracing Islam. Yathrib was transformed, so much so that it earned a new name, Al-Madna Al-Munawwara, the enlightened city. But Mus'ab's role went further. As the community grew, he sought permission from the Prophet, peace be upon him, to establish the first Jumu'ah prayer in Yathrib. With the Prophet's blessing, Mus'ab delivered the inaugural khutbah and led the gathering, the first Friday prayer in Islam's history, a tradition carried on to this day. Less than a year after his arrival, Yathrib was ready to welcome the messenger himself. During the pilgrimage season of 622 CE, Mus'ab returned to Mecca, leading over 70 new Muslims. At night, near Medina, they met the Prophet in secret and pledged their lives to protect him, the second pledge of Aqabah. Mus'ab introduced each to the Prophet, completing his mission as ambassador. The Prophet, peace be upon him, praised him highly. Through Allah's grace, this one young man had prepared an entire city for Islam. The stage was now set for the Hijrah, the migration that would change history forever. Before the Hijrah began, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, singled out Mus'ab for a special distinction. He would be among the very first Muhajirun, migrants, to enter Medina ahead of everyone, alongside the blind companion Abdullah ibn Maktum. Mus'ab had started as a stranger in Yathrib. Now he returned as one of its beloved leaders. He had helped lay the foundations of what would soon become the first Islamic state in Medina, all before the age of 30. In the months that followed the Hijrah, Mus'ab continued to serve the Muslim community with courage and selflessness. He joined the Prophet in the Battle of Badr, 624 CE, Islam's first major confrontation with the forces of Mecca. During that battle, Mus'ab encountered a prisoner of war who happened to be his own brother, Abu Aziz ibn Umayr. An Ansari Muslim had captured Abu Aziz and was binding him. As Mus'ab passed by, he told the captor, "Tie him tight. His mother is wealthy. She will pay a good ransom." Hearing this, his brother cried out to Mus'ab in disbelief, "My brother, is this how you speak of me?" Mus'ab replied firmly that the Ansari holding him was "my brother now, not you." His words were stark but sincere. The brotherhood of faith had surpassed the bonds of blood. Such was Mus'ab's commitment to the cause of Islam that even family ties came second to his loyalty to Allah and his messenger. In the third year after the Hijrah, Quraysh marched to Medina with 3,000 men, burning for revenge after their loss at Badr. The Muslims, only 700 strong, met them at the slopes of Mount Uhud. On that morning, the Prophet, peace be upon him, placed the white banner of Islam into the hands of Mus'ab ibn Umayr. The youth who once wore silks now bore the symbol of faith, carrying it with solemn pride. At first, the tide favored the Muslims. Quraysh lines broke, their camp was seized, and victory seemed near, but a group of archers, ignoring the Prophet's orders, abandoned their post to gather spoils. It was the opening Quraysh awaited. Khalid ibn al-Walid, still fighting for Mecca, swung his cavalry around the mountain and struck the Muslims from behind. Panic erupted. Surrounded and scattered, the Muslim ranks faltered. Quraysh pressed forward with one goal: strike down the Prophet, peace be upon him. Word spread that Muhammad might have fallen. Confusion turned to despair. In the chaos, Mus'ab acted. Raising the banner high, he cried, "Allahu Akbar!" His voice cut through the dust and din. From afar, his build and bearing resembled the Prophet. Quraysh thought they had found Muhammad. They charged at him. Mus'ab knew it and welcomed it. If the enemy came for him, the Prophet would be spared. With sword in hand and banner in the other, Mus'ab stood firm. He drew the horsemen toward himself, striking, shouting, holding the flag aloft as arrows and blades rained around him. Then came Ibn Quma'ah al-Layth. With a savage blow, he severed Mus'ab's right arm. The banner slipped, but Mus'ab seized it in his left. Ibn Quma'ah struck again, severing his left arm too. Still, Mus'ab pressed the banner to his chest, refusing to let it fall. His lips moved, reciting the words of the Qur'an. Muhammad is but a messenger. Messengers have passed before him. Qur'an 3:144. It was as if Allah placed those words on his tongue to remind the Muslims the faith did not depend on one man, but on the truth itself. A spear pierced his body. At last, Mus'ab fell, and the banner dropped beside him. Quraysh rejoiced, thinking they had slain Muhammad, but the Prophet was alive, protected by his companions, saved by Mus'ab's sacrifice. When the dust settled at Uhud, 70 Muslims had fallen. Among them was Hamza, the Lion of God, and Mus'ab ibn Umayr. The Prophet, peace be upon him, walked the battlefield with tears in his eyes. Before him lay Mus'ab, once Mecca's most pampered youth, now covered in dust and blood. As the martyrs were prepared for burial, a painful truth emerged. Mus'ab had left this world with nothing. All they found was a single cloth, too short to cover his whole body. Khabbab ibn al-Arat later recalled, "When we covered his head, his feet showed. When we covered his feet, his head was exposed." The Prophet, peace be upon him, wept at the sight. The boy, once draped in silks, now had not even a full shroud. The Prophet said, "Cover his head and place idkhir grass over his feet." As the companions did so, the Prophet gazed at Mus'ab's face, remembering his days at Dar al-Arqam, his mission to Yathrib, and the last smile he gave before Uhud. His grief was so deep that the companions said they never saw him weep more than for Hamza and Mus'ab. Standing by his humble grave, the Prophet recited, "Among the believers are men who were true to their covenant with Allah," Qur'an 33:23. Then he declared, "The Messenger of God testifies you are all martyrs in the sight of Allah." Before leaving, he gave a timeless command: "Visit these martyrs and send peace upon them. By him in whose hand is my soul, no one will greet them until the day of resurrection without their salam being returned." With that, he bid farewell. "Peace be upon you, O Mus'ab. Peace be upon you, O martyrs of Uhud, and the mercy and blessings of Allah be upon you all." Mus'ab ibn Umayr's death sent ripples of sorrow through the Muslim community. The companions all mourned the youth who had been like a younger brother to the Prophet and a mentor to so many of them. Yet amidst the mourning, they also remembered the astonishing journey of Mus'ab's life, a journey that became an enduring example of faith across the ages. Mus'ab ibn Umayr left this world with nothing of his old life, no silk, no wealth, not even a full shroud to cover him. Yet what he carried into eternity was far greater. The honor of being the Prophet's ambassador, the first to bring Islam to Medina, and the banner-bearer who gave his life so that the messenger of God would live. Mus'ab fulfilled his vow. His story reminds us that true greatness is not in luxury, but in sacrifice for Allah's cause. Today at Uhud, pilgrims still send salam to Mus'ab and the martyrs, believing their salam is returned. This was Mus'ab ibn Umayr, the Prophet's ambassador, the youth who gave up everything for Allah, and the banner-bearer of Uhud who fell a martyr. His life reminds us that true greatness is not in wealth but in sacrifice for the sake of faith. But Mus'ab was not alone. Across Arabia, other souls were rising, men who would leave their tribes, their comforts, and sometimes even their families to follow the Prophet. One of them was Al-Tufail ibn Amr, the poet chief of Daws, a man courted by Quraysh to resist Islam, yet whose heart was turned by the Qur'an itself. His story of defiance, loyalty, and struggle is the next chapter in our journey. Witness it in episode 3 of the Sahaba series, only on Darvish Chronicles. Like, share and subscribe, and in the comments tell me, what would you have given up the life of luxury if you lived in Mecca beside Mus'ab? Until next time, may peace and blessings be with you.